they're working with young people. I'm going to submit some documents for the record, Mr. Chairman, that will help spell this out. Here's an article entitled "Trump Delivers Massive Blow to Youth Justice Programs."
Objection.
April 29th. Here is a letter that we all received from the Conference of Chief Justices in the state courts administration expressing deep concerns about the termination of Department of Justice grants to our communities. And I also ask unanimous consent to enter the record a letter dated April 25 from the Council of State Governments Justice Center to express profound concerns and strong opposition to the termination of Department of Justice grants totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. I raise this because, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I raise it because, some of our colleagues, they've been quite inscrutable in their reaction to what we've been talking about tonight. Sometimes it seems like I'm in a Quaker meeting house or a Maga mime troupe or something, because I'm trying to read people's facial expressions and their body language to see how they're reacting. But a lot of what we've been voting on are constitutional principles like due process and free speech and birthright citizenship. But this is something that really should unify all of us. And I want to warn all of my colleagues, Democrat and Republican, that there will be danger back home if you do not vote to restore these grants that have just been categorically cut. I've been so upset about it after I've spoken to some law enforcement from my state that I tried to track down where did this come from. And it didn't come from the House of Representatives. There was nobody pushing it here. As far as I can tell, it didn't come from anybody in the Senate. Nobody in the executive branch is identified with it except for someone who works for DOGE. And I see a picture of him in a bow tie. The name is Tarak Makicha. And Tarak Makicha is the author of the Excel spreadsheet that destroyed hundreds of these grants to local law enforcement in our communities, to local victims and survivors groups in our communities, to anti-gang efforts, to juvenile assistance work, and so on. And so I was just able to look at Tarak Makicha up online, and this is a DOGE employee. The bio on this employee's website goes back basically to Tesla from 2017 to 2019. They worked at Tesla in various roles, including head of strategic planning, Tesla Energy, chief of staff, North America sales and delivery, and global finance lead, working capital and supply chain. Most recently, they've been the vice president of finance and operations at SkySafe since 2022. They attended the University of Texas and so on. Well, look, this person has essentially dismantled a lot of the infrastructure of funding to combat crime and violence and to assist victims in all of our districts. And so this amendment is simple. I don't know that any member of this committee or Congress would be saying if this person had not simply wiped out all of this funding, we should be wiping out that funding. But this person did it. And that doesn't seem like a very sensible way to proceed procedurally. And I know that all of us are going to hear about it from people in our districts if you have not already heard about it. And I don't want anybody to plead complete ignorance. This is our chance to reverse the damage right now. And especially for people who don't want to get into gun safety regulation, this is money that goes actually to try to create peace in the community, to fight gangs, to get kids off the streets. All that money's being cut right now. And so what this amendment does, Mr. Chairman, is simply to restore all of these cuts that were made by this individual, as far as I can tell. I thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman from New York.
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
I just want to emphasize a couple of points that the ranking member so eloquently made, and make sure that my Republican colleagues who talk very much about caring about public safety and caring so much about fighting crime and law and order understand that the grants that were yanked away from so many of these organizations makes our communities less safe. It makes fighting violent crime, gangs, guns, drug trafficking much, much more difficult. That's what these grants do. These grants in various different ways, some of them go to local law enforcement, some of them go to local organizations that keep kids out of gangs, that keep guns off of our streets, that reduce demand for guns. These are proven to be effective programs. And it's not even just that we decide, okay, in the future, we're not going to fund these grants. It is actually grants that have already been appropriated, have already been obligated, and in some cases have already been spent down because they're in the budgets of these organizations, and yet they're just yanked away by an administration that talks so much about public safety. And we hear over and over, apparently, of the, you would listen to the president, of the 5 million undocumented immigrants who came over the border in the last 4 years. I think the way he talks, it's got to be about 4,950,000 of them must be criminals or drug dealers or rapists, because certainly everybody I hear about is a violent criminal. Obviously, the data doesn't bear that out. In fact, the data shows that Americans commit a much higher proportion of crimes than immigrants do. But if you want to make our country safe, I think there's an expression, make America safe again. Isn't that one of the expressions? You would think that you would want to invest in programs in law enforcement that actually do make us safe. But once again, this president, this administration, and the complicit Republicans in the House are all talk, no action. Because if you truly wanted to put your vote where your mouth is, you would 100% support this amendment and ensure that our communities are kept safe by these critical programs.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, of course I will yield.
And thank you for that powerful statement you just made. My amendment would require DOJ to reinstate grant funding to hundreds of groups. Here's one of the ones that contacted my office, the National Policing Institute. And they have a program where they provide critical support to local and county law enforcement under the, quote, Rural Violent Crime Reduction Initiative. So they're able to take the money and put it into rural areas to fight violent crime. And they'd gotten the grant, they were expecting the grant, they were counting on the grant, and whoever this person is, not the House of Representatives, not the Senate, I'm not hearing anybody in the cabinet taking credit for it, but whoever this person is in DOJ, which sometimes fashions itself a fourth branch of government, just slashed all of that money. Is there a single member of Congress who knew this was going to happen? Is there a single member of Congress who wanted this to happen? And now they're going to be showing up in our offices saying, we had a whole program for fighting violent crime in rural areas, which is gone now. We had a whole program for reaching out to young people with an after-school program, and now it's gone. And what are we going to say? Well, we didn't know anything about it. I'm afraid at this point, we are burdened with the knowledge that DOJ has done this. And so I thank the gentleman for yielding. I hope everybody can support this amendment.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Texas recognized.
I'd move to strike the last words.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you so much. I just want to say that this is such an important amendment for so many reasons. You know, there have been actual full-blown bills because of literally one incidence of a crime victim. And here it is, we have an opportunity to restore and reinstate grant funding, say for programs such as a program that would enhance access to crime victim services for persons with disabilities, including a grant that provided American Sign Language interpretation services to domestic violence victims with disabilities. My question is, are we really that cruel? I mean, y'all have done full-blown bills where y'all have, taken away everybody else's due process rights and things like Lance Gooden, Mr. Texas, next door to me. Are you okay with victims not being able to have access to resources? You're my next door neighbor. You mute? Because you always talking to, okay, you're gonna be mute. Okay, that's fine. I also am curious, Lance Gooden, Texas, Mr. Gooden. Okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna just say that that I know what I'm talking about. So that's what you mean by sitting there. Did you also realize that while we are going through reconciliation, because this supposedly is about saving money, and supposedly the Republicans are more fiscally responsible than we are. So we think that victims should have access to resources cut in something like this, but the report came out today. Did you see the news, Lance, about President Trump? How he spent 220 billion, that's what it be, billion more dollars in his first 100 days than guess who? Joe Biden did in 2024. Imagine that. And last time I checked, Joe Biden is a Democrat. So I just want to say that as we go through reconciliation, in all seriousness, what is so frustrating for us on this side of the aisle is that we all agree that we should get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. I think it's how we have defined it. And it seems like if you're talking about victims, then it's okay. It seems like if you're talking about putting law enforcement in an even worse situation, then it's okay. It seems like if our communities are going to be overrun, then it's okay. It seems like it's okay if it means that we are going to deport U.S. citizens. It seems like it's okay if we are going to round up babies and tell them that they won't have judges. It seems like it's okay to cut funding for all of that, so long as we don't touch the budget as it relates to somebody spending time down in Mar-a-Lago and golfing. I mean, this is about our priorities. And right now, we on this side are prioritizing healthcare. We're prioritizing humanity. We're prioritizing safety. I'm just saying, when y'all have to go home, I don't know if your constituents are going, and Lance, your constituents are like right next door to mine. I don't know if they're going to appreciate some of these votes. With that, I will yield back.
The lady yields back. Gentleman from Colorado.
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
I thank the chairman. I thank the ranking member for the amendment. I think it's a reasonable amendment, and I would relish the opportunity to debate the amendment with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I am very confused by the strategy that they seem to have adopted, and I guess I just wanted to test it for myself because as I walked in here, one of my colleagues said, "No, if you offer to debate them in any way on any subject, they'll refuse to engage with you. They won't respond, that there's some sort of, I don't know, tactic that they've adopted." I said, there's just no way that that's true. So because I, of course, serve with Mr. Roy, for example, on the Rules Committee, and we engage in fulsome debate on that committee. And I just can't believe that this would be a tactic he, of all people, my friend from Texas, would adopt. Mr. Roy, seriously? Is it, you won't respond? We can't have any conversation? Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm delighted. Would you be willing to debate this particular amendment with me? Because I'd be interested in your thoughts. What was that? What was that? What was that? No, I know. I'm offering you the opportunity. I assume you're against this amendment, and I just wonder if you might engage with me for a few moments on why. Nothing? Mr. Roy, come on. Because here's the thing. I know for a fact you disagree with this strategy. Like, I don't know what Chairman Jordan said to all of you to compel you to say, we're just getting this gag order. You're not allowed to talk for 24 hours. I mean, it is insanity. This is not elementary school. What are we doing? Mr. Tiffany, we served together on the Public Land Subcommittee. You're the chairman. We had a fulsome hearing yesterday, hours of debate. Do you have any comments on this amendment? I assume you have a position on it? I would yield. What was that? I don't know if the cameras could capture it. I think some sort of gesture. I cannot believe cannot believe that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have debased themselves in this way. I mean, this committee has long been known as a committee that engages in rigorous and robust debate. Mr. Chairman, could I indulge you? Or would you be willing to just debate with me for a moment on this amendment? Nothing? This is probably the only time in the 7 years I've been in Congress that Chairman Jordan has refused to make a comment.
No, let me do.
Really? I'm happy to yield a moment to you. Do you support this amendment that Mr. Raskin has offered?
The simple and straightforward amendment for the,
What was that? It's a simple and straightforward amendment, exactly?
that's what every amendment, I think.
No, but this one is a particularly simple and straightforward. I mean, look, here's the thing. This amendment, very simple, very straightforward. All it says is that the grants that the Department of Justice has allocated pursuant to the authority that we have given that department for police departments in Ohio, in the chairman's state, that those grants be held harmless. That these grants that DOJ had managed to cut to local police departments, that they be reinstated. That's it. That's all this amendment does. Nothing else.
Will the gentleman yield for a minute?
One of my Republican colleagues, or is it?
Nope, sorry.
Oh, on the yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
Sorry.
there's not a single Republican colleague of mine that'll engage in any way. Again, I just think it falls short of the standards of this august body and this committee. And Mr. Chairman, I get it. I know you want this hearing to end early. I understand, but why not live up to the values of this committee and the expectations of this committee, and let's have a healthy exchange of views back and forth, and we can then let the chips fall where they might. So I'll give you one last opportunity. On this one, you must, come on.
You're a kind man.
Well, I'll yield to my colleague from.
Well, I was just going to suggest that we see if Mr. Van Drew is back there. He's been chomping at the bit to say something. I don't think he's ever spent this many hours without speaking. So I don't know if he's back in the anteroom over there, but that certainly that might be your best bet.
Yeah, I think he's in hiding, and it's consistent with the approach that my colleagues have regretfully taken over the course of the last couple of weeks. Most of them not holding town halls. Constituents can't find them, and lo and behold, now here in the committee, where we're supposed to be debating these kinds of amendments, and aren't willing to say a word. And we've been here before. I mean, we had the reconciliation debate, of course, when Democrats were in the majority. I served on this committee, and we had a debate. There was never an order from the chairman to say you're not allowed to say a single word for 24 hours. And that was never an edict that came down from Chairman Nadler. I don't recall that. So anyway, I see I'm out of time.
Certainly not.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to speak in support of this amendment, but I just want to say I was really privileged to join a campaign with the ranking member and other august members of this body in supporting of, the grant funding for a lot of the initiatives that have now been deemed unjustified and terminated by Trump's Department of Justice. One of them I want to talk about in all seriousness now, because this is really serious business. And I know that we've kind of been able to banter back and forth, but honestly, this is really serious because the American people need to really pay attention to what's happening here tonight. What's been happening here all day long is an inability of our Republican colleagues to take this seriously and to care about the welfare, the protection, and the safety of the Justice Department, your public safety, and what's going to happen in this country if we do not stand and defend democracy, civil liberties, and defend you. And so let's even talk about the Valor program. It was a program that is now defunct, that was aimed at supporting law enforcement, and you claim to be the party that supports law enforcement. It supports officer wellness and officer safety, something surely that I hope that you all would want to support. It provides state and local and tribal law enforcement with in-person and web-based training and technical assistance to directly affect officer safety and wellness. Now, if you're going to call yourselves the party of supporting our men and women in blue, And this should be something that you should really want to reinstate. You cannot continue to be the party that says one thing and does another, because trust me, the American people are watching. And this has not been funny business all day long. We have been seriously trying to have constructive debate with you. The American people deserve that. They deserve far better than what they've been getting today. And it is a tragedy that we're wasting taxpayer dollars because this system is not working the way it was designed to work. And shame on us. Shame on us for sitting here and playing with the American people's civil liberties and their rights. And they are on the line. And for everybody that is watching in America, I hope you're really paying attention to the direction that this country is going in under this administration. So I know that everyone has had time to banter and laugh about this, but this is serious business. So let's work on reinstating the funding for these critical initiatives. That it's something that all of us should be supporting. So I urge my colleagues to take this seriously, have constructive debate, do not underserve the American public, because this is what you've been doing today, and I yield back.
Will the gentleman yield just for a moment?
Yes, I'm more than happy to yield to the gentleman from
I
Maryland.
want to thank the very distinguished gentlelady from Georgia for those powerful remarks that I hope give everybody a moment to pause and think about what's been happening here. We've been in session for 8 hours now. I believe that the members of the minority have advanced a whole series of amendments on the weightiest of topics, including due process and birthright citizenship and freedom of speech and so on. We have tried to advance arguments in a thoughtful and deliberative way. We've tried to keep good humor with all of our colleagues. We've obviously gotten the silent treatment today from our friends across the aisle. The reason the Constitution protects our speech and debate is because the framers wanted us to engage in speech and debate. There are profound things going on in America right now. Very serious, heavy things taking place with the Trump administration. We need to be talking about them. It'd be one thing if they were listening to all of these eloquent, evidence-based speeches on this side and then voting with us, but our friends have listened to all of them and just voted against us without uttering a peep. They've been exercising their privilege against political self-incrimination, perhaps under the First and the Fifth Amendment, because perhaps they don't really want to be associated with what Donald Trump is doing, but they also perhaps don't want to take a stand against Donald Trump within their own caucus. But for whatever reason, they seem to be tied up in knots today. I feel proud of our members here who have taken a very serious position on behalf of freedom, liberty, the rule of law, and community resources for law enforcement in America. Thank you for yielding, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Like my colleague from Georgia, I'm deeply concerned about other programs that are being cut because of this, cut that is being carried out by someone, we don't even know who this person is. Nobody in here called for these cuts, as the ranking member has said, not anyone in the House, not anyone in the Senate. Nobody in the White House is taking responsibility. So somebody in DOJ made the decision to make these cuts. And one of the things that's also going to be cut, or has been cut rather, it's already happened, correct? It's already happened, is the comprehensive opioid abuse site-based program. Now, nearly 1/3 of Americans know somebody who's died of an overdose. Can you imagine? 1/3 of this country, you know somebody who's died. I know in my hometown of Brattleboro, Vermont, we've had many people who have died from substance use disorder, have been impacted so horribly from the opioid epidemic. And this cutting of these funds is going to have a devastating impact on these organizations that are working to bring us back from the brink of this destruction. This is meant to reduce opioid abuse, reduce the number of overdose fatalities, mitigate the impact on crime victims by supporting comprehensive collaborative initiatives. And I know every single member in here, every single district has been touched by the opioid crisis. And it's just shocking to me that we can't engage in a conversation here about these programs that have been cut, and we can't even identify where it's even come from, that some rogue person in DOGE who has no accountability has made these decisions for our communities. And I absolutely support this amendment. I am shocked that we can't have a conversation about programs that our constituents, that our communities desperately need. And you're right, to the member from Georgia, this is not a joke. This is deadly serious.
Will the gentlelady yield?
Absolutely.
I just wonder if the gentlelady is aware that, as we've seen in prior similar cases, certain people who have the right political juice have been able to get to DOGE to get some of these restored, but others have not.
That's right.
So as far as I can tell, the opioid grants have not been restored. The juvenile justice grants have not been restored. But other people, if they know the right person, then suddenly it's no longer waste, fraud, and abuse. Suddenly it's an urgent expenditure by co-presidents Musk and Trump. And this is just an absurd way for us to proceed. Congress is allocating the money, and they got the money, they distributed the money, and now DOGE gets rid of all of it, but then it restores it to the people who have an inside political track.
That's exactly right. And let's talk about that kind of grift, that kind of corruption, that some members of Congress can pull the strings to get funds for the people in their district, but others do not. What kind of country is this? That you can pull the strings, you can go behind the scenes, you can make a call to somebody important that can release those funds for your district. It's obscene.
If the gentlelady would indulge me one more
Absolutely.
question. I understand that Senator Grassley was able to get a program restored, but I saw that he went to a town hall meeting and his constituents were actually fighting for everybody.
That's right.
Saying that DOGE should not be allowed to sabotage all of these programs across the country. They weren't doing special pleading, but now we have certain politicians who say, I don't have the courage necessarily to take on DOGE and Elon Musk and to actually challenge Trump, but I will try to use my inside track to get grants restored in one community or one district. And that's just a dishonorable way to go.
It is dishonorable. And I agree with the ranking member that this is not what Americans want. His constituents were pissed about what he had done because they knew that we are supposed to be a collection of states that we are looking after each other. We're looking after each Americans, regardless of what zip code they live in. And it's just absolutely patently wrong that you could have a member or a senator be able to work their way around to get a program reinstated for their district, but not for everybody else. That's not how it's supposed to work in this country. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to seek unanimous consent to introduce into the record an article from the New York Times called "Republicans Love Trump Spending Cuts, Just Not in Their States."
Objection.
I think this is really an important point that's happening here because with the silence of my Republican colleagues across the aisle, what you're hearing is a constant essentially bowing down to things that you may or may not agree with. I really have no idea because nobody will speak on that side of the aisle. I mean, it's really stunning in the Judiciary Committee that we can't get anybody to say why they oppose or support an amendment. We really don't know. But at the end of the day, what's happening is behind the scenes, people are going and advocating for money to come back in, even when publicly they are allowing for that money to be cut. They're actually advocating for the money to be cut publicly because they're so afraid of Donald Trump that they got to do everything Donald Trump says, at least not speak out about it publicly, but then going behind the scenes in a sneaky little way to say, but please don't cut it in my district because actually my constituents need it. And so it becomes a real hypocrisy, actually, in terms of what we're doing here. Do you support it or do you not? Do you support it for everyone? Do you support these cuts for everyone or do you not? And are we going to allow, to the ranking member's point, are we going to allow somebody that nobody knows who they are to just unilaterally take the power away from members of Congress who appropriated those funds? And that's another thing throughout this whole debate today that has just stuck with me.
Will the
Is,
lady yield for one question?
yeah, you bet.
So you make a serious point about the individual hypocrisy of people who are unwilling to challenge it in public, but go behind the scenes to do some special pleading. But systemically, wouldn't you say that it turns us into something like a tin pot dictator kind of state, where if you're politically aligned with the in-group, you can get money for your people,
That's right.
but then nobody else gets it? And so that is also a major assault on the rule of law.
That's right. No, you're absolutely right. And I think it is, I mean, I also just can't imagine, because we have some really smart people on the other side of the aisle, people I've worked with on a lot of issues, including the chairman, including many others. And what I don't understand is, why would you voluntarily give up your power as a member of Congress? I mean, why run for Congress? Why be here if you actually can't do anything that you think is right for your constituents? So much so that you have to go behind the scenes and advocate privately for something that publicly you said you supported, some cut that you publicly supported, but now you can't actually support that cut because it's not good for the people who elected you, who you represent. And so you got to go behind the scenes and say, and plead with somebody that you don't know to please restore your cuts. And then maybe that buys your silence for the next time. Maybe that's part of this as well, is that you're getting the benefit of going and advocating and not saying anything publicly so that you can get that benefit for yourself. So I just think this article is really, really important because it outlines all of the ways in which Republicans, and it specifically names people, senators and House members who did this, who publicly opposed, who publicly supported cuts and then went and tried to salvage programs that were cut because they were so bad for their district. So maybe you all should check this article out, see if you're in here, because I think this is serious. You know, why be a member of Congress if you aren't going to say anything for, let's see, 8 hours and 15 minutes that we've been here, and you're not going to say anything publicly to oppose the very cuts that privately you're trying to make sure don't happen in your district? That seems like a travesty and cowardly, frankly, which is not something I would expect from all of the members on the other side of the aisle. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Question occurs on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Maryland. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Could I request a recorded vote?
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan?
No.
Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Issa? Mr. Issa votes no. Mr. Biggs? Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock? Mr. McClintock votes no. Mr. Tiffany? Mr. Tiffany votes no. Mr. Massey? Mr. Roy? Mr. Roy votes no. Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Fitzgerald votes no. Mr. Klein? Mr. Klein votes no. Mr. Gooden? Mr. Gooden votes no. Mr. Van Drew? Mr. Nels? Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore votes no. Mr. Kiley? Mr. Kiley votes no. Ms. Hageman? Ms. Hageman votes no. Ms. Lee? Mr. Hunt? Mr. Fry? Mr. Fry votes no. Mr. Grothman? Mr. Grothman votes no. Mr. Knott? Mr. Knott votes no. Mr. Harris? Mr.